This young man's world, along with that of millions of others, was about to change dramatically.
And on October 7th of last year, when Hamas attacked Israel in a massacre,
the world changed for this young man.
Nothing was ever going to be the same, as another generation loses its innocence. Will was a graduate student working part-time, while he was studying full-time to earn a PhD at MIT. To Will's dismay, his graduate student union, and other unions across the country, publicly aligned themselves with rhetoric that appeared to endorse the October 7th attack on Israel.
The campus riots, and some led by his union officials, became exhausting.
Will, a Jewish college student, was consumed by a torrent of anguish and exhaustion. The relentless stress gnawed at his soul, yet he felt an unshakable resolve to act. The thought of being coerced into funding his union's anti-Semitic actions filled him with visceral revulsion, a betrayal that cut deep and fueled his determination to resist. The union demanded fees, or he'd lose his job. Will did not want to pay for their vile anti-Semitic rhetoric and their disruptive actions on campus. In the heart of Massachusetts, where the law offers no shield, Will, a man of unshakable faith, faced an impossible choice. Trapped in a system with no right to work protections, he could not escape the anti-Semitic union that demanded his loyalty. Resigning meant losing his job. The United Electrical Workers Union, steeped in actions Will's heart condemned as anti-Semitic, demanded his dues, his silence, his complicity. As a sincere Jew, every fiber of his being screamed against it. Supporting these campus actions wasn't just a betrayal, it was a wound to his soul. But instead of compassion, they met him with cold indifference. They didn't listen. They didn't care. They told him to fall in line, or face the consequences.
He is a courageous young man. Will decided to use his courage and use his strength that he has to fight for his rights. And he used our National Right to Work legal program to make this a national story.
With the backing of Glenn Taubman and the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation, Will Sussman led the charge to bring the fight of Jewish students across America all the way to the heart of power. Will filed charges against the anti-Semitic United Electrical Workers Union with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. They weren't done yet. Will took another bold step, filing unfair labor practice charges against the union with the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB. They didn't stop at legal filings. Will and Glenn carried the voices of thousands of Jewish students into the halls of power, testifying before Congress, right inside the U.S. Capitol, helping to expose the injustice of compulsory unionism to America.
Many of these employees are forced to pay dues that go directly to subsidize the union's celebration and support of Hamas's massacre.
My name is William A. Sussman. I am a doctoral student in computer science at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Last December, this committee heard MIT's president testify that calling for the genocide of Jews can be anti-Semitic depending on the context. Allow me to share some of that context. According to the Anti-Defamation League, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, or BDS, is an international campaign aimed at delegitimizing and pressuring Israel through the diplomatic, financial, professional, academic, and cultural isolation of Israel, Israeli individuals, Israeli institutions, and increasingly, Jews who support Israel's right to exist. The MIT Graduate Student Union, known as the GSU, has engaged in BDS since its inception. It's one of the reasons they chose to affiliate with the United Electrical Workers, or UE, which endorses the BDS movement and urges the union at all levels to become engaged in BDS. Hamas terrorists waged the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust, slaughtering babies, raping women, burning whole families alive, and taking hundreds of innocents hostage. The blood had not yet dried when my colleagues at MIT declared, "Victory is ours." In November, my union representative joined anti-Israel protesters who were occupying a building, and when threatened with suspensions, the GSU backed the protesters. Meanwhile, the GSU illegally threatened to terminate anyone who refused to pay for their so-called activism. I filed a charge against the union with the National Labor Relations Board, which agreed that the GSU had violated our back rights. However, the NLRB refused to require training of union agents who continue to break the law. In January, when MIT brought disciplinary charges against 2 graduate student protesters, the GSU organized another protest, this time in front of the Discrimination and Harassment Office. One picket sign read, "Anti-Zionism does not equal anti-Semitism." And in May, the GSU vice president was arrested at yet another protest. She was banned from campus, but remains on paid union leave. As I wrote in the Wall Street Journal, Jewish graduate students are a minority at MIT. We can't remove the GSU or disabuse it of its anti-Semitism. But we also can't support an organization that actively works toward the eradication of the Jewish homeland where I have family living now. The union denied my request, telling me in a letter that no principles, teachings, or tenets of Judaism prohibit membership in or the payment of dues or fees to a labor union, that one of UE's founders was Jewish, and that opposition to BDS isn't a position I hold for religious reasons. In other words, UE thinks it understands my faith better than I do. With the help of the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation, I joined 4 other Jewish graduate students in filing discrimination charges against the union with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. In response, the GSU chanted shame against us. Facing potential charges of its own, MIT began approving religious accommodations, and the union followed suit. But UE represents graduate students at a dozen other universities, and it should not take 5 discrimination charges to exercise our freedom of religion and association. This Congress should pass the National Right to Work Act so that unions have to earn their dues and think twice before discriminating against minorities.
The president campaigned on the fact that he was not going to tolerate anti-Semitic behavior on campuses. We talked about things we thought would be improvements to protect civil rights on campus.
With Will's courage and tenacity, he ended up getting a nationwide dispensation for thousands of students across the country, protecting them against the forced payment of fees to unions that were literally calling for the end of the Jewish people. So, Will, I'd like you to come up here and accept this year's Carol Applegate Award. You have certainly earned it.
On behalf of Jewish students across America, thank you. Not only for this honor, but for standing with the Jewish people in our darkest moments since the Holocaust.